In the depths of Greek mythology arises the story of one of antiquity's most powerful heroes, Hercules. His fate was determined even before his birth. He was the son of Zeus, ruler of the gods, and the mortal woman Alcmene, a descendant of Perseus. The union of divine and human in a single being promised not only great strength but also great trials. Yet the arrival of Heracles into the world was steeped in intrigue and jealousy. Hera, the wife of Zeus, could not endure her husband's betrayal. She knew that a child born of a mortal would become a symbol of Zeus's power on earth, and she sought at all costs to destroy the infant in his cradle. But fate had other plans. According to legend, Zeus proclaimed that whoever was born on a certain day would become the ruler of Argos. But Hera, intent on thwarting this plan, hastened the birth of another child and delayed the birth of Heracles. Thus, a weaker relative claimed the throne of Argos, while Heracles, from his first moments of life, bore the curse of the jealous goddess. Even as an infant, however, his superhuman strength revealed itself. When Hera sent two venomous snakes into his cradle to strangle him, the young Heracles grasped them with his tiny hands and crushed them as if they were toys. This episode became a symbol. Before he even had consciousness, the hero had shown that he could resist death itself. His upbringing was entrusted to the wisest teachers and mentors. Amphitryon, Heracles' mortal father, taught him the art of war. Autolycus passed on knowledge of cunning and the hunt. Eurydice revealed the secrets of archery, and Linus instructed him in music and song. Yet the hero's strength was so great that even ordinary lessons turned into danger. When Linus scolded Heracles for a mistake, the youth struck him with his hand and killed him, proving that his strength was not yet mastered by reason. From his earliest childhood, an aura of greatness formed around him, but so too did the sense of a curse. He was too strong for mortals and too mortal for the gods. This inner conflict became the driving force of his destiny. He was fated to accomplish 12 labors, tasks that exceeded the limits of human possibility. But before he could undertake them, Heracles had to know suffering and loss, which made his path both tragic and glorious at once. The strength of Heracles was both a blessing and a curse. He grew into a brave, mighty, and handsome man. People admired him, and enemies trembled before him. But Hera never forgot her hatred. She knew, if she could not destroy the hero physically, she would break his spirit. In adulthood, Heracles married Megara, the daughter of the king of Thebes. He loved her and their children above all else. His life seemed to have reached harmony, family, fame, and respect. But it was then that Hera struck a blow that would forever leave a scar on his soul. The goddess sent madness upon Heracles. In a state of terrible frenzy, he could no longer distinguish friends from foes. To his eyes, the world became a battlefield filled with monsters and enemies. And, seized by blind rage, he killed his own children and wife, not realizing what he was doing. When the madness lifted and his mind returned, Heracles saw a horrific sight. His hands were stained with the blood of his dearest ones. This moment became one of the most tragic scenes in Greek mythology. He understood that, despite his strength and divine heritage, he remained a plaything in the hands of the gods. Grief-stricken and full of remorse, he set out for the Oracle of Delphi. His question was simple: how could he atone for this sin? How could he cleanse himself of a crime beyond any punishment? The oracle, inspired by Apollo himself, proclaimed, Heracles must serve his enemy, King Eurystheus, and accomplish 12 labors. These would be tasks beyond human possibility: battles with monsters, the capture of sacred creatures, the cleansing of filth. Only by passing through these trials could Heracles purify his soul and find the path to immortality. At this moment, his legendary journey began. It was not merely a struggle against monsters, but a struggle against himself, against anger, weakness, pain, and despair. And although the labors still lay ahead, it was already clear: Heracles would become a symbol of strength, suffering, and hope for all humankind. The first trial that Heracles received from King Eurystheus was the task of killing the Nemean Lion. This monster terrorized the inhabitants of the region around the city of Nemea. Its hide was so tough that no arrow, no sword, no spear could pierce it. People lived in constant fear, and their fields and homes became prey to the beast. Hercules set out on his journey. A long path through mountains and forests led him to the cave where the lion dwelt. From afar, its roar could already be heard, a sound that made even the bravest warriors tremble. The hero drew his bow and loosed arrows, but they bounced off the beast's body as if against stone. The truth was clear: no weapon could harm the savage creature. Realizing that strength and cunning were his only allies, Hercules blocked one of the cave's exits and entered from the other side. Inside, the darkness and the heavy breathing of the lion created an eerie atmosphere. When the beast lunged at him, Hercules grappled with it in a deadly struggle. His arms tightened around the creature with such force that its bones cracked. Gradually, using his incredible might, he strangled the lion. The victory was won not only through strength, but also through courage and resourcefulness. Yet another riddle awaited him: how to skin the invulnerable body. Athena appeared to Hercules and revealed that only the lion's own claws could cut through its hide. Thus the hero gained his first trophy armor, a cloak and helmet made from the head and pelt of the Nemean Lion, which became his recognizable symbol in art and legend. When Hercules returned to Eurystheus, the king was so terrified at the sight of the hero clad in the lion's skin that he forbade him ever again to enter the city. From then on, Hercules had to report his labors while standing outside the city gates. This episode showed that even the king feared the very strength he sought to exploit. The second trial was the Lernaean Hydra, a many-headed monster that lived in the marshes near the city of Lerna. Its appearance was a dreadful curse upon the people. The Hydra would emerge from the waters to devastate fields, destroy livestock, and at times attack humans. But the most terrifying thing was that each severed head grew back again, 2 new ones in place of one. This made the battle against the creature seem almost hopeless. Hercules set out for the marshes together with his nephew Iolaus. The swamps were shrouded in mist, and the very ground seemed poisoned. From the depths of the waters, the Hydra rose, its massive body large enough to cover an entire square, with poisonous breath spewing from its jaws, killing all life around it. Hercules began the fight. His blows were swift and powerful, and the heads fell to the ground, but this only made the monster more dangerous. 2 grew back where one was cut. The Hydra's poisonous blood soaked the ground, and even touching it was deadly. In this critical moment, Hercules called upon Iolaus for help. He instructed him to light a torch and cauterize the neck wounds each time a head was cut off. This strategy proved successful. No new heads grew back. One by one, the hero's strikes and the young man's flames subdued the monster. At last, Hercules severed the final immortal head and buried it under a massive rock so it could never again harm the world. But he did not stop there. He dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood. From then on, every shot he loosed was lethal, for wounds inflicted by such arrows could never heal. This was the first use of deadly weaponry in Greek mythology. When the hero returned, Eurystheus refused to count this labor, claiming Iolaus had helped him. Yet Heracles' fame only grew. He had defeated a monster that had terrified entire nations. The next task Eurystheus gave was to capture the Cerberus hind. This was no ordinary animal. It belonged to the goddess Artemis and was sacred. Its antlers shone like gold, and its hooves were made of pure bronze. The hind was so swift it could outrun even an arrow shot from a bow. Heracles understood. This time he could not kill or harm the creature. His task was even more difficult than the previous labors, for he had to capture a being protected by the gods themselves. The hero embarked on a long journey that lasted an entire year. He crossed mountains, forests, rivers, and valleys, never stopping by day or night. The hind always slipped away from him, as if it were the embodiment of speed and grace itself. At times it seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving only tracks on the ground. Heracles pursued it, overcoming exhaustion, cold, and heat. At last, by the river Ladon, the hero chose a different tactic. He crept close at night, when the hind came to drink water. Carefully, he drew his bow and released an arrow, which only slightly wounded the creature without killing it. This allowed him to catch up and seize it alive. But on his way home, Heracles was confronted by Artemis herself, enraged that her sacred creature had been captured. The hero bowed his head and explained that he was carrying out commands he could not refuse. Hearing his words, Artemis realized he acted not out of malice, and she allowed him to take the hind to Eurystheus, but only on the condition that the animal remain alive. Heracles returned with the trophy but did not let the king keep it. As soon as he presented the hind to Eurystheus, he immediately released it back into the wild, fulfilling the task without breaking his sacred oath before the gods. This labor revealed not only Heracles' strength and endurance but also his wisdom, patience, and respect for higher laws that outweighed the commands of a mortal king. The fourth trial led Heracles to the mountain peaks of Arcadia, where the gigantic Erymanthian boar lived. This beast ravaged fields, trampled crops, and attacked people. Its tusks were so long and sharp they could split a tree in half. Heracles set out into the snowy mountains, where cold and wind reigned. The journey was harsh, snow fell endlessly, and the frozen ground lay hidden beneath thick drifts. The higher he climbed, the more treacherous the path became. But the hero pressed on with confidence, knowing he had to subdue the monster. The boar appeared suddenly, bursting from the bushes with a roar like thunder. Its eyes glowed red, and each step made the ground tremble. Heracles gave chase, driving the beast higher and higher into the mountains. At last, he cornered the creature on a peak where the snow was so deep that even the gigantic boar began to sink. Here Heracles used his strength. He seized the beast by its tusks and threw it to the ground. Binding it with heavy chains, the hero forced the monster into submission. When Heracles brought the living beast to Mycenae, Eurystheus was so terrified that he hid inside a giant bronze jar, unwilling to look upon the dreadful trophy. This episode entered legend as a symbol that even the fiercest forces of nature can be tamed by courage and strength of spirit. The fifth labor seemed especially humiliating to Eurystheus. He ordered Heracles to clean the stables of King Augeas. At first glance, the task appeared simple, but everyone knew it was a trap. Augeas possessed an incredibly wealthy estate, his herds numbering thousands of cattle and horses. The stables had not been cleaned for decades, and manure lay piled in mountains, spreading a stench that was unbearable. When Heracles stepped into the filthy buildings, he felt the stench cling to his skin and clothes. Hundreds of animals bellowed and stomped, while the heaps of filth seemed an insurmountable obstacle. Not even the strongest man in the world could clean them in a single day, and that was precisely the condition. The hero realized that brute strength alone would not help. He needed to use his mind. He carefully surveyed the land, walking along the nearby rivers. Then an idea came to him: divert the flow of the rivers so that the waters would wash away all the filth on their own. Heracles broke through the stable walls, dug deep channels, and redirected the courses of two rivers, the Alpheus and the Punius. The torrents surged inside and flushed away years of accumulated waste. Within just a few hours, the stables were cleansed, and the air there became breathable once again. Augeas, however, at first refused to honor his promise to reward the hero, claiming the feat was achieved too cleverly. But the fame of the labor spread faster than the king's words. People saw that Heracles had accomplished the impossible. He had turned filth into cleanliness, chaos into order. This labor symbolized not only physical strength but also the ability to find unconventional solutions, to overcome challenges with intellect as well as muscle. The next task led Heracles to a dark and eerie forest near Lake Stymphalus. There lived terrifying creatures, the Stymphalian birds. Their beaks were made of bronze, their wings could shoot out metal feathers, and their cries sounded like the clashing of weapons. People were too afraid to even approach this place, for the birds attacked in flocks, destroying all living things. When Heracles came to the lake, dark wings rose into the sky, blotting out the sun. A chaotic roar erupted, like a raging storm. The hero realized that arrows and swords were useless here. He could not possibly defeat the entire flock. But help came from the goddess Athena. She gave him bronze castanets, crafted by Hephaestus himself. Their sound was so loud and piercing that it frightened all the birds. Heracles raised the castanets and began to shake them. The clamor spread all around, and the birds, terrified, flew high into the sky, losing their formation. Then the hero took up his bow and shot them down one by one. Some fell into the lake, while others fled far into the forests. When the battle ended, the shores of the lake became quiet once more. People were able to return to these lands, and the fear that had reigned there for years disappeared. This labor demonstrated not only Hercules' strength, but also his ability to cooperate with the gods, to accept their gifts and use them wisely. Without Athena's aid, he could not have succeeded, but thanks to her counsel, the hero triumphed over the deadly creatures. After the battle with the Stymphalian birds, Eurystheus gave Heracles a new task, to bring back alive the wild bull from the island of Crete. This was no ordinary bull, but a creature that had slipped out of the gods' control. According to legend, it was a gift from Poseidon to King Minos, but instead of sacrificing it, the king kept it in his own herd. Angered, Poseidon made the bull go wild, and it began to terrify the island. When Heracles arrived in Crete, he heard the villagers' accounts. The bull trampled fields, destroyed fences, and attacked people. Its roar sounded like thunder, and its eyes burned with a wild fire. Heracles set out to find the beast. In the mountains, he saw it, a massive bull with white fur that gleamed in the sunlight, and majestic horns capable of piercing even stone. The hero did not hesitate. He rushed at the bull and seized it by the horns. A fierce struggle began. The ground shook with the pounding of hooves, and dust rose high into the sky. The bull tossed Heracles, trying to throw him down, but the hero held firm, gripping its head as though with iron clamps. At last, after a long fight, the bull grew exhausted. Heracles threw it to the ground and subdued it. He brought the beast to Eurystheus, but when the king saw it, he was so terrified that he ordered the bull to be released. The creature broke free and, according to legend, roamed through Greece for a long time before being slain by Theseus. This labor symbolized Heracles' ability to tame the wild force of nature, to make chaos yield to mankind. After the Cretan bull, an even more dangerous trial awaited Heracles. Eurystheus ordered him to bring back the horses of Diomedes, the Thracian king. But these animals were not ordinary, they fed on human flesh. Diomedes, son of the god of war Ares, kept the horses in iron stables. Their neighing echoed across the land, and their very breath carried the stench of blood. They were bound with heavy iron chains, for even Diomedes' own servants could not restrain them. Heracles set out for Thrace with his companions. When they reached the stables, the hero immediately realized that taming the horses by force would be nearly impossible. So he made another decision, to defeat Diomedes himself. In battle, Heracles proved stronger. He hurled the tyrant to his own horses. The beasts tore him apart, and once they had fed, their fury subsided. At last, Heracles was able to lead them out of the fortress. But when he brought the horses to Eurystheus, the king, terrified by their wild nature, ordered them to be released. According to legend, they were set free, and their descendants roamed the land for a long time afterward. This labor showed that even the most brutal force can be subdued if you strip it of its source. In this case, a tyrannical master. When Heracles returned after taming the horses of Diomedes, Eurystheus prepared a new trial for him. This time it was not connected with beasts or monsters, but it carried its own deceit. Heracles was tasked with obtaining the belt of the queen of the Amazons, Hippolyta. The Amazons were a warlike tribe of women warriors who lived on the shores of the Black Sea. They feared neither gods nor men, and their queen Hippolyta was renowned for her bravery and wisdom. The belt she wore was a gift from Ares and symbolized her authority. Heracles set out on a long journey, and when he arrived at the Amazons' camp, something unexpected happened. Hippolyta, having heard of the hero's deeds, decided to give him the belt willingly. She saw in Heracles not just a warrior but a hero worthy of respect. But Hera, who had always hated Zeus' son, intervened. She spread a rumor among the Amazons that Heracles intended to kidnap their queen. The armed women, in panic, surrounded the hero. A fierce battle began. Arrows rained down on Heracles' men, shields clashed, and swords gleamed in the sun. Though Heracles did not wish to shed blood, he was forced to defend himself. He triumphed in the fight and took the belt, but a bitter mark was left in his heart. He understood that this time the cause was not his strength or courage, but the gods' treachery. This labor showed that even the greatest hero cannot always avoid tragedy when the immortals interfere in mortal affairs. The next trial was an even more difficult task: to bring back the herd of red cattle belonging to the giant Geryon. This creature lived at the edge of the world, in the land of Erythea, and had 3 bodies, 3 heads, and 6 arms. At his side always stood his terrifying 2-headed dog Orthus and the giant herdsman Eurytion. To reach Erythea, Heracles had to travel vast distances. He wandered through scorching deserts, where thirst drained his body and the sun burned mercilessly. In these lands he even drew his bow and threatened Helios, the god of the sun, demanding relief. Impressed by the hero's boldness, Helios gifted him a golden cup in which Heracles could sail across the ocean. When he reached the island of Erythea, he was met by Orthus, the 2-headed hound. With a single blow of his club, Heracles killed the beast. Then he defeated the herdsman Eurytion. Only then did Geryon himself appear, a giant with 3 torsos, wielding enormous weapons. The battle was fierce. Geryon's strikes shook the earth like bolts of lightning. But Heracles shot him with an arrow dipped in the poisonous blood of the Lernaean Hydra, and the giant fell dead. Heracles seized the herd and began his return journey to Greece. It was one of the longest and most dangerous expeditions of his life, for the path led through foreign lands, and enemies lay in wait at every turn. Nevertheless, he completed the task and brought the cattle to Eurystheus. This labor became a symbol of how the hero was able to cross even the farthest boundaries of the world and conquer the most fearsome monsters. The 11th labor was one of the most mysterious in Heracles' life. Eurystheus ordered him to obtain the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. These were magical fruits that granted immortality. They were guarded not only by the nymphs, the Hesperides, but also by the dreadful dragon Ladon, who had 100 heads and never slept. The road was filled with secrets and dangers. Heracles journeyed far to the west, to the very edge of the world. First, he sought advice from the wise sea god Nereus, who could change into many forms. Heracles captured him and held him until he revealed the secret path to the garden of the Hesperides. As he drew closer to the garden, he encountered Atlas, the titan who bore the heavens upon his shoulders. Heracles struck a bargain with him. He would take on the burden of the sky, while Atlas would fetch the apples. Atlas gladly agreed and indeed brought the fruits, but then sought to leave Heracles under the weight of the heavens forever. Yet the hero showed his cunning. He pretended to agree, but asked Atlas to take back the heavens for a moment so he could adjust his cloak. When Atlas lifted the sky once again, Heracles seized the apples and departed. Thus, the hero obtained the fruits of immortality, but not for himself. He delivered them to Eurystheus. However, Eurystheus, fearful of their power, gave them to the goddess Athena, who returned them to the garden of the Hesperides. This labor showed that strength is valuable, but wisdom and cunning are sometimes more important. Heracles was not only a slayer of monsters, but also one who could outwit even titans. The last task that Eurystheus gave Heracles was the most terrifying of all. He ordered him to bring from the underworld the hound Cerberus, the 3-headed guardian of the gates between the world of the living and the dead. To accomplish this labor, Heracles had to descend into the very realm of shadows. He received blessings from the gods so that the journey would not claim his soul. On his way down, the hero beheld dreadful sights: rivers of the dead, gloomy shades wandering aimlessly, and monstrous beings that even the gods avoided. At last he reached the palace of Hades. The lord of the underworld greeted him calmly. Heracles asked for permission to take Cerberus, and Hades agreed, but only on the condition that the hero would subdue him without weapons. Heracles approached the fearsome hound, whose jaws dripped with poisonous foam and whose eyes burned with fire. He seized Cerberus with his bare hands and held him so tightly that the beast could not break free. The 3 heads howled, the serpent tail lashed in fury, but Heracles did not let go. In the end, he subdued the monster and led him out of the realm of the dead. When Eurystheus saw the hero with Cerberus, he was terrified and ordered that the beast be returned at once. Heracles fulfilled the condition, and thus this labor completed his 12 years of trials. This was a victory not only over nature and monsters, but over death itself. Heracles proved that a hero can walk through darkness and return unbroken.